It is without doubt one of the most landmark aviation deals in international aviation. It's the most historic order, the largest order of civilian aircraft, 470 aircraft for Air India, 370 options as well. And in as much as Air India is an old airline, I think the plan over here at Air India is to have a new airline going forward, an airline which is going to transform the experience for customers around the world and in a sense transform Indian aviation, make us a hub of aviation. We've got a very special guest. Campbell Wilson is the CEO and MD of Air India, somebody who's been part of this entire process of transformation, and we'll talk about that as well. I think my first question to you is, people are impatient for change. We've seen this airline, we've grown up with it. So in 1 year from now, what can we expect? And then let's say 3 years and 5 years, what will we see?
Well, we are also impatient for change too. We've been working very hard over the 1 year since privatization and the 7 months since I came on board to map out what is our transformation plan. And as you well know, we've got a 5-year program split over 3 phases covering many, many different work streams to fix the basics, build platforms for the future, and then grow to what we aspire to be, which is world class. In the past year, we've re-platformed IT systems, new website, new app, new reservation system. We've recruited many, many people, more than 1,200 people on ground professions, nearly 2,000 people in cabin crew, many pilots, to fill a talent gap that had been left after 15 years of no recruitment. We have restored to service 20 aircraft which had previously been grounded for lack of parts, and we've spent a lot of time trying to rehabilitate existing aircraft with new carpets, curtains, seats, basically as fast as the supply chain will allow. Rolled out new menus and leased in a number of aircraft, 36 aircraft so far, to expand capacity and improve the product in the process. We've deployed or announced 16 new international routes, increased capacity on 9 others, and more than doubled the daily revenues. So there's been quite a lot happening in the last 12 months. In addition to that, we have planned for and committed $400 million to refurbish the interiors of all of our wide-body aircraft, which will commence service from the middle of 2024. And as you rightly say, we have completed the negotiations for the largest order of aircraft by any airline, anywhere at any time, which will further improve the product and power clearly network, but also capacity growth. So it's been a busy 12 months.
So I think it's important perhaps to point out that once you have your refurbished aircraft on board, along with a few new build aircraft, the quality of the customer experience on board immediately gets improved, right?
Absolutely. So that the immediate action was this carpet seats,
right?
To just get a level of basic standard. Committing to these leased aircraft allows us to elevate in the immediate term whilst we plan for and execute the refurbishment of wide-body aircraft. People might not realize that it takes about 18 months after you commit the money and decide what product you want to go through the regulatory and engineering and manufacturing process for new seats, as well as installation on the aircraft. So we're going literally as fast as it's possible to go. So that's the medium term. Then clearly the long term is the new fleet order. These aircraft will come with the latest generation seats and flat entertainment. So by the end of 2024, I think it's quite clear that the vast majority of services that people will experience from us on board the aircraft will be absolutely brand new.
Let's talk about ultra long haul routes or long haul routes because a lot of the aircraft you're acquiring are specifically being acquired with that in mind. I'm interested in the 777X. That's a wonderful platform coming up, but certainly the A350s, which will form such an important benchmark for you. So where could I travel from in the years ahead from let's say New Delhi? Where would I likely have options on Air India?
Oh goodness. The untapped potential of Air India, but also Indian aviation for non-stop services pretty much anywhere in the world is unparalleled. We have used the new aircraft that we're leased in, and we also plan for the new aircraft that we're purchasing to serve the long-haul markets. North America clearly is a very attractive market. There's a huge business opportunity. There's a huge diaspora. So you've seen already that we've mounted new services from Delhi. We've restored some services from Mumbai. We've restored services from Bangalore into North America, and that will continue to be a significant focus. In Europe, we've recommenced services into Copenhagen, to Vienna. We've put a lot of services into Gatwick, which previously weren't the case before, strengthening into London Heathrow, and we have further plans to strengthen the European market. So they're probably the top two priorities. Clearly there are many, many others in East Asia, Southwest Pacific and elsewhere that we want to strengthen, not just the footprint but also the frequency. Yeah. Because hitherto perhaps Air India was more of a leisure airline or a visiting friends and relatives airline. As India rises up from in the economic stakes as well as a key node in international business, we will more and more carry business travellers, and so that non-stop service into all of the key business centres of the world is going to be a key
So in terms of destinations in America, what would you look at? You fly to San Francisco presently. Would you look to expand more in the West Coast as well? Los Angeles, for example?
Well, both. So Los Angeles has largely been constrained by aircraft range to date. So clearly that's not going to be a constraint moving forward. But San Francisco, other destinations on the West Coast, Midwest, we're clearly into Chicago, Washington DC, New York, we've put a lot of capacity for recently, but also let's not forget Canada, Toronto, Vancouver, and there are a number of other North American destinations that we feel can be well supported by non-stop service from India.
You also mentioned Southwest Pacific.
Yes.
So which areas are you looking
Australia, New Zealand.
Australia, New Zealand.
We've increased services into Australia already. And we're looking to expand the presence there because clearly there's strong demand.
Yeah. Why did Air India acquire, or why are you acquiring both the A350 and the 777X? Is there not an overlap in terms of their capabilities, the number of passengers they carry and their range?
Well, I think the order was split between the two principal OEMs, Airbus and Boeing, for a number of reasons. One is to ensure we get the absolute most appropriate aircraft for a particular mission. Different aircraft, different engine configurations are optimized for certain missions. So we wanted to make sure that we could optimize the network. Secondly, there's an element of strategic alignment. We want to make sure that there does we do have some competitive tension in negotiations, not just now but moving forward. There's also risk mitigation. When we have engine manufacturers, we want to make sure that there are different engine manufacturers on different types of fleet in case there's a problem with one that causes us not to be able to deploy aircraft as well as we want. We're seeing that in the market today.
Right.
So there's many reasons why we decided to split the order as we did, and it's not uncommon. If you look at other airlines of a similar scale and a similar geography, our future fleet is not materially dissimilar.
At the moment, several countries in the Middle East, or certainly several airlines, are hubs, and they operate on that basis. Do you think Air India can be that hub, for example, for passengers traveling from further afield in Asia, wanting to travel to the West or vice versa? Is that really the goal? That they pick Air India instead of an Emirates or a Qatar or one of your competitors presently?
Well, for all of the reasons, geography and all of the things I mentioned, absolutely we can. We need to make sure that the whole ecosystem is working in sync. Airport, airline, policy. But if we can get the ecosystem to work in sync, I think there is no reason why Air India cannot be that sort of hub global interconnector. And that's an important part of our aspiration as well. We want to be an airline, clearly an Indian carrier with an Indian heart, serving people flying to and from India. But we want to be one of those carriers that people think of when they want to travel from A to C, not necessarily B, which is India in this case. We want to be a carrier that people go to by choice because we offer great product, great service, great reliability, great value, and as good as any other in the world.
The look of Air India going forward, I presume you'd have an entirely new livery. I mean, this one's been around for a while. I love it. But a lot of people would perhaps suggest that you need a refresh, both outside in terms of the look and inside. Is that something that occupies mind space for you?
It does. We've been public in that we have appointed a consultancy to look at both the brand as well as the interior product. And they are working through that process now. As part of that process, we've engaged a number of different stakeholders, whether it be private sector, whether it be from within the Tata Group, including Mr. Tata, other stakeholders in government and elsewhere, to get a sense of how they want the new Air India to represent the new India on the world stage. Clearly, it's a highly subjective matter. It is one that everyone's going to have an opinion on. So we're working through this process carefully.
Yeah.
But yes, I think when we have a new Air India and we can stand behind with pride and confidence a new product, new service proposition, new fleet, I think it's perhaps appropriate that we have a different visual representation to signify just how different this new Air India is.
And when would you be announcing that?
Well, I think we need to let the process run its course.
You haven't finalized a livery at the moment or a look. It's still being spoken about, or is there something that you've said, no, this is what it's going to be, but I just can't tell vision right now.
No, we're not there yet.
Right. One of the most fascinating aspects of Air India in terms of the look, once again, is the historical connect. There were beautiful murals painted on in first class and business class. Even the windows have had a certain design outside. So there is that historic association which exists. Would that still be there? Because in aspiring for a new India, would you necessarily keep that aside because that's been done with, or do you think there would be elements of that?
Air India has 90 years of history.
Yes, huge.
And 90 years of assets and imagery and heritage. And so we do want to carry elements of that forward. It's important. Equally, we need to look at the future, and we do need to demonstrate that we're not just rooted in the past, we're also aspiring towards something in the future. There are other entities that we would like to respect as well. Vistara, assuming we get approval.
Yes.
They've built a very good airline over the past 8-9 years. And so I think there's more than 5,000 people there that have an interest in how the new airline is represented. So I think this is really an opportunity to think freshly whilst
and would the Maharaja be a part of your plans?
The Maharaja will certainly be a part of our plans. How it is part of the plans, let's let that process run out. But it's a very, very, he and maybe she, very important in future.
He and maybe she. So that's interesting. I mean, is that something that you would perhaps look into? Having a mascot, also a woman, as part of your sort of mascot or mascots?
I think we need to consider all things. I mean, the world evolves.
Yes, absolutely.
And expectations evolve. Expectations not just of Indian society, but of global society. And so I think this is an airline, as I say, that needs to also look at the future whilst respecting the past. And so this is one of the many things that we need to consider as part of a brand reset.
When it comes to designing the interior, I mean, there are several leading manufacturers of, let's say, seats and in-flight entertainment systems. Will they be designing to what Air India's specific requirements are, or are you going to be buying something which is already there, which you feel works for you, and that you would have a fleet-wide adoption of that particular system or particular look or cabin?
Well, the reality is that it has to be a combination of both. The process for designing a custom seat is very long, 4 years or so, because aside from the utility of it, there's also the regulatory compliance. Many areas of regulatory compliance. Then there's the manufacturing process, which includes how heavy the seat ends up coming. So that's not a luxury that we have available to us, that 4 years of time. We've got aircraft coming imminently. So in the near term, it is going to be picking what's already been certified, customizing it to the extent we can, making it look clearly Air India,
right.
And then invest in the time and development necessary to do something that is more uniquely us.
Yeah. So the 6 A350s coming in, that's when the rail, I would call it perhaps the biggest step in the transformation, immediately visible. When would those aircraft come in? Where would you deploy them? And would they have a product, because I believe those planes were headed to Aeroflot. Would they have that product on board, or would it be different?
Well, I think we've already seen a deployment of aircraft with a much improved product.
With the Delta airplanes,
there are 5 777s that are, I think we already have 2, maybe 3 in service now, serving North America, and that is a material improvement on the legacy product of Air India. The products coming in that formerly were destined for Aeroflot have an excellent product. We will be deploying with that product simply because the aircraft were already manufactured. And then some additional aircraft coming in during the course of the year that have an improved product. So I think probably by the end of this year, early next year, about 1/3 of our wide-body fleet will be effectively a new product. Then over the course of 2024, we start deploying the existing Air India wide-body aircraft that have been completely refurbished with new seats, new in-flight entertainment, effectively new on board.
Yeah. And would the 6 A350s have the new livery, or would they be the existing one?
Let's wait and see.
There must have been moments during that deal process, particularly with the engine manufacturers, with a very, very heavy competition, as I understand it, where you would have thought that, you know, it's not really going the way we want to, it's not really working according to our budget, the time periods are challenging. Were there moments that you felt that your dream of what Air India should be based on a new fleet were not being realized? Were there moments like that?
I think in any negotiation, there are points at which, you know, there are some challenges, that one side has a particular view that the other one doesn't agree with. But I think what was really quite gratifying in this, that everyone saw what the potential and the opportunity was. And so notwithstanding that there might have been difficult points, the focus really was on how do we work around that and come to something that we can all live with. Yeah. And so again, I need to pay credit to the teams of all parties involved in reaching this outcome.
You know, there's been a lot of reporting recently about a couple of unfortunate incidents on flights, one from Paris, one from New York. The DGCA has spoken about this extensively. Is there a sense that perhaps Air India needed to have done things differently, perhaps address this issue more publicly, or try and work with the passenger who was affected more quickly?
Well, I think as we said at the time, there are things that we didn't do as well as we should have, and lessons that we've learned. One of the key things is reporting incidents that happened. Perhaps there was a culture before where things we tried to resolve internally rather than reporting, perhaps, so that they can be taken up by other folk. There are other things that we've done. Clearly, a review of our alcohol policy, which frankly the policy was very much in line with what other carriers do, but educating our staff on how to identify people that are becoming intoxicated and deal with that. And also technology. Air India, as I've previously mentioned, had underinvested in a number of things, including technology over the years. And so many processes were manually based with all the risks and delays thereof. And so deploying more modern technology is clearly part of the solution.
Yeah.
I would like to say, though, yes, that not a day goes by without us receiving some report from crew on behaviour on board the aircraft. And so much of it stems from people consuming alcohol before they even get on the aircraft, or them being upset when they're not continued to serve alcohol on board the aircraft. And in the vast majority of cases, the people that suffer the abuse, be it verbal, sometimes physical, are our crew. And so we've seen over the course of the past few years many airlines and IATA generally call out the fact that there is degradation of behaviour on board aircraft. And so this call out, this incident that we experienced, very regrettable. Clearly there's things we could have done better, but I think it's a wake-up call for the industry generally and for travellers generally, that there is a standard of decorum and behaviour that is required in public places, including on aircraft. And I think it behoves all of us to raise our game, Air India included.
It's difficult to actually ensure that takes place. The passenger is out of, you don't control the behavior of the passenger. You could only tell the passenger what is correct once they're on board that aircraft. But how does one start with that process of educating passengers on what is appropriate and what isn't?
I think we have to be clear in our communication publicly. I think when people do cross the line, we have to hold people to account. Clearly there's gradations of how we hold people to account, but I think also as an industry and as a regulator, we need to take action. Sure. In India there is a very complicated process to suspend people from travelling, which is quite unusual compared to most of the world. And I think perhaps there should be a little bit more discretion left to the airline to unilaterally take decisions to deny someone carriage. When they have, particularly when they've threatened crew, when they've threatened other passengers. I think as a society we perhaps need to take a look at this.
Yeah. One final question, and this will be the final question. You are hiring massively, 900 plus pilots, I think, over the next 1 year. Where would you get so many pilots?
Well, India has been an exporter of talent to the world, including in aviation, and perhaps in part because there weren't quite the opportunities in India that allowed people to stay here and pursue their dreams here. With this order of aircraft, with this integration of the 4 airlines into one or two, there is no better place in the world for people to pursue an aviation career, whether you're ground staff, cabin crew, pilot. So we expect to attract a lot of Indian talent from India. Secondly, we certainly expect to attract Indian talent from outside of India back into India. Thirdly, we're putting a huge investment into a training academy with other partners to develop our own talent pipeline, not just for Air India, but for Indian aviation more generally. But because of the speed of our ramp up, as I say, 36 aircraft being leased in this year, plus the aircraft that we've just acquired, we do perhaps need to augment some of that talent with temporary foreign employees. That's something that we need to do to accelerate the transformation and growth, but clearly our focus for the future is to have Indian talent base, homegrown, ideally in our training academy, and give people all of the career opportunities that they aspire to.
Wonderful. It's been wonderful speaking to you. Thank you so much. And it's something so many across this country have hoped for, a new Air India, really taking Indian aviation to new heights. All the very best. Thank you very much for speaking to us.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.